I was talking to people with whom I disagreed, but I had learned to always find something in their point of view and then build on that. So I did things like the Congressional Prayer Breakfast every Wednesday morning. Was usually very conservative Christians, and I never missed it. They called on me to pray, and I prayed for the family of Vice President Agnew, who just had to resign. And the fact that I prayed for his family, it shocked all the other Republicans. And I said, why not?
Rachel Maddow is still with us. Rachel, I think the bipartisanship part of the documentary is interesting, and it's generally kind of lost right now, although we did see a glimmer of forging that sort of relationship today. Let me play you a little bit of sound from Tim Burchett, the congressman from Tennessee, on his relationship with the Democrat Steve Cohen, also another congressman from Tennessee.
Steve Cohen, probably as far left as you can be. You know, he's Jewish, and I try to be a Christian. We came from Tennessee together. We raised the speed limit together. You know, and we were kind of, I always joked, we'd go out to eat dinner at night because he was so far to the left and I was so far to the right, we met on the other side. But honestly, sometimes I just want to scratch his eyes out, you know, but he called my mama when my daddy died, and you can't get past that. And that is what we've lost in this thing.
Yeah, I don't want to be Pollyanna-ish about this, but it is something we've lost, and I wonder if that does give you a little bit of hope.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see that kind of decency in Congress. This was a place where we never expected. I was thinking also, you know, when I saw Andrew Young this week in Georgia, and he was talking about a sort of key moment in Albany, Georgia, when Dr. King had been arrested and was in jail. And he wasn't supposed to be arrested. He wasn't supposed to be in jail. It was kind of a strategic screw-up. And Andrew Young went down there to meet with him and to try to figure out what they were going to do to get themselves out of this mess. And the desk sergeant, when he walked up, called him the N-word to his face. And he got in to go see Dr. King, and he asked Dr. King, like, how am I going to deal with this? Like, I'm a little hot under the collar for dealing with this. And Dr. King told him that, you know, this is not the fight that they needed. It was hard enough for them in jail. He didn't need to be fighting with the desk sergeant. And he said he remembered what his father told him, which was when you're talking to a law enforcement officer, look at their name on their shirt, call them by their name and their rank, and be kind to them, look them in the eye. He called the officer, he thanked him, called him by his name. He said, Andrew Young said at the time he was about 140 pounds and that desk sergeant was about 300 pounds. He guessed that he might have played football, started talking to him about football. They ended up making friends. And over time, eventually that desk sergeant left the Deep South, couldn't live with it anymore, stayed friends with Andrew Young, moved to the Northeast. That kind of story, after being in the middle of this, you know, with your mentor in jail, in the middle of this cauldron of hate and danger, to me it's a blessing to hear those stories and to see that as part of the moral inheritance that we have from the leaders of that era. And so you see it in small ways today. It's always good. It's never bad. And I hope that people can build on that sort of thing and learn about that, both in terms of its moral density, but also its strategic use. It's better to have friends than not.
Yeah, trying to relate to somebody on whatever you can find to relate with them is better than demonizing them entirely, because you're never going to work with somebody who you think is not human or completely unreasonable in every single way. Let me ask you about the protests this weekend. We touched on them before we went to break a second ago. Maybe 6 million people showing up for the No Kings protest around the country. I was struck yesterday. We were playing a little bit more historical footage. This was of the march from Selma to Birmingham on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and how that moment, this was also in the documentary, how that moment changed the psyche of the American public. And you say in the documentary that the scenes of the beatings on the bridge, it was brought to TV viewers through a special report that literally interrupted a movie about the trials at Nuremberg. So you, on the one hand, the audience is watching how fascism takes over in movie form, but about a real event. And then they see these real images of what it could look like here on American streets, what it is looking like here on American streets. And it got people angry enough to end up passing the Voting Rights Act. I think it was like 2 days later that it passed. When we're looking at the images of the ICE raids today and people pulled from their cars, beaten up, or people in handcuffs, or families being separated, the stuff that our colleague Jacob Soboroff has been covering so heroically, I don't know if it's inspiring the same sort of horror as it would have if we didn't live in this digital age. Why is it? Why have we become so desensitized to it?
I don't know that we have. I mean, one of the things that I've found, I've focused a lot and I've tried to make sure I've covered pretty intensively regular Americans responding to the things the Trump administration has done in this term. The protests, not just the big No Kings protests like this huge one that we're going to see the day after tomorrow, but protests that have happened sort of everywhere. And one of the really interesting evolutions of that dynamic in this second Trump term has been what we have seen in Chicago. These scrappy, sort of instant, not at all top-down, reflexive protests that are happening in neighborhoods where people recognize what's going on with ICE there. They respond immediately. They get out there with their neighbors and they do something. And it's happening all over Chicagoland. There's been really good journalism starting to document it, but it's because it's small scale and reflexive and emotional and quick and not, mass organized. It's something that people need to be on the ground there reporting to be able to see it. And that kind of stuff, I think, does speak to the reflexive disgust of the American people for the kind of tactics that we're seeing from ICE, but also to our instinct to respond with peaceful, loud, direct action. And that is an inheritance that we got from generations who came before us. And to the extent that the elders of that generation are still here to tell us what it was like for them and what their advice is for us now, I want to listen. I want to get the word out.
Yeah, nonviolent, peaceful protest worked. Hopefully it can still work. Rachel Maddow, thank you so much for all of your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Tune in tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, for a live special edition of The Rachel Maddow Show. Then at 9 p.m. Eastern, MSNBC Films will air Andrew Young, The Dirty Work, executive produced by Rachel. Again, it is fantastic. It'll make you feel better. Watch it.